oldest city synagogue ever found in Israel. Now we are not sure any longer which is earlier. They're roughly the same time period. We cannot tell within a month or even without the year, but they're all date to the 1st century. In fact, this building was the first one excavated by Shmaria Gutman, the original archaeologist who worked here. By the way, Shmaria Gutman also worked at Masada. After finishing Masada in the 1960s, he came here in 1976 and started the excavation. Now, the first year, he wasn't even sure it was Gamla. He believed it was, but many of his colleagues told him, no, this cannot be Gamla. It's too far away. You are wasting your time, etc., etc. So when he excavated this building, he called it a public building, which no doubt it is, but he couldn't connect it with anything stronger. Although he found many of the ballistic balls and arrowheads, so it was clear that a big fight was fought here. What made the final connection that this is a synagogue is the building that we passed and which we shall see as we go out, which is the large public mikveh. They all know what a mikveh is, Marcella?
Yes.
It's a Jewish ritual immersion bath. So the two together really are what we call a community center. And each of them separately can be called a public building and maybe a water cistern, but the two together in such proximity, there's no question today that this is a synagogue. There's a big debate about synagogues that existed before the fall of the temple in Jerusalem. We know for a fact that synagogues were in existence because Josephus tells us that people went to synagogues. He even tells us that court was held in synagogues. And I don't know where in the it tells us. No, I think in the New Testament we have evidence. Of course, we have evidence that Jesus prayed in several synagogues at Chorazim and at Capernaum and wherever. And I'm not sure now if it's in Josephus or in the New Testament about flogging that took place in the synagogue. If people were taken to court and the judge found them guilty, they would get flogging. You know what flogging is? They could be beaten up in the synagogue, which was also a court. So there's no question they existed. The big question today is why do we find so few of them? Because from the Byzantine period, from the 4th, 5th, 6th century, we have over 50 synagogues in Israel, including about 30 on the Golan itself. What?
No, I mean, having the temple, they didn't need so many synagogues because the synagogue is not a temple. No, without the temple, they need to spread in another way. No, I think.
Wrong. Because according to the written evidence, there was a synagogue practically in every village. The point is understanding what is a synagogue before the year 70. In fact, in the days before the fall of the temple, the main function of the synagogue was reading the Torah, not praying. Praying was done wherever you wanted, and the main Jewish ritual was in the temple in Jerusalem. The synagogues, it's what is it, the word synagogue? It's a place of assembly. So modern scholars very often think of it already in terms of the later synagogues, that are a house of prayer, which it wasn't. It was not a house of prayer. It was a place to read the Torah, and they could also carry out other functions. They could have celebrations. The city council could meet here. Court could be held here, and maybe a school. We know that kids went to school in the late Second Temple period, and maybe it could be also a school. So there's no need to associate it with prayer. The point is, why do we have so few? We have two large ones at Gamla and at Migdal. We have two small ones at Masada and Herodium, which were constructed by the rebels during the war. And we have two more village synagogues in Judea. These are all we know. And today we are beginning to understand that maybe the reason is that synagogues before the fall of the temple were not necessarily buildings that the archaeologists can recognize as public buildings. They could have been simple houses where people met, house of assembly. So any house that we excavate could have been a synagogue. The finds inside do not tell us what the building was used for, and maybe they don't have benches. Now Gamla is a big town, so it needed a big synagogue. So that is the main points. Now, how do we tell between a pre-70 synagogue and a later synagogue? Did you have talks about this at camp?
No.
Basically, all the later synagogues that come after the destruction of Jerusalem have as their main function prayer. And where do you pray to? Towards Jerusalem. So all the later synagogues are oriented with the praying direction to Jerusalem. Here, Jerusalem is about that direction. And this building is oriented in that direction. So Gamla, Magdala, Herodium, Masada, and the other small synagogues that were built during the temple period do not have any specific orientation. Their orientation is only a local consideration. Here it's parallel to the mountainside, that's all. It has no significance at all. In all the later synagogues, in the direction of prayer, there's usually a podium or a place to keep the Torah books. In the Second Temple period synagogues, we don't have that, neither in Magdala nor in Gamla. We have that little cupboard in the side, which maybe they kept the Torah scrolls, but it's not the direction facing Jerusalem, so it was only a secondary importance. And the main thing, which you also recognize from Magdala, that in all the later synagogues, the seating arrangement is such that all people face the direction of Jerusalem, or at least partly. I'll put it in a different way. The side facing Jerusalem does not have benches. At Magdala and at Gamla, you have benches all around. What does it mean? That the focus of the building was not Jerusalem, but the focus of the building was the center. And these three things separate Second Temple period synagogues from the late synagogues. Direction, the existence or non-existence of a place for the Torah scrolls, and focus in the center. This is maybe where the person who read the Torah read it out. Maybe there was a little table, like the one at Magdala, and people sat all around and listened to him speak. The Gamla synagogue is very strange in one aspect, and that is this line of stones here. We had a big debate. There's an archaeologist, Ehud Netzer, who died a few years ago. He excavated many sites, and we had a big debate with him. He thought that all this hall was plated with stones, and that during the war or before the war, the stones were taken out maybe to build the fortifications. And we don't agree to that because of two reasons. First of all, whoever stole it, why would he leave such a neat band all around? And this specific line here is exactly aligned. Most of them are narrow stones, but there's two square stones, the one I'm standing on and this one. They are aligned exactly with columns, and the column here and the column there. So we think, contrary to all the other synagogues we know, that apart from the columns surrounding it, there is also two columns in the middle. A little difficult to see, but we reconstruct columns all around plus two columns here in the middle, which divide the space exactly 2 to 1. So these two lengths and one length. And this comes out to be exactly a square. What the meaning of is, we don't know. But this is unique so far. Maybe in the future we'll have some more information. Now one question that comes to mind, where are all the columns, all the pieces? We have no idea. We thought maybe they fell down the slope. We found, I think, two pieces of columns, but no more. So we have no idea what happened there. We know that up on top, near the parking lot, there was a small Byzantine village, including a church. So people thought maybe the people who lived there took the stone from here up there. Not much point, because first of all, we did not identify any stones the same size. The stones, their columns are much smaller. And there's enough raw material up there, you can no need to take stone from here to there. So this is an enigma we cannot solve. Now come and see a very nice little place up here. If you like, you can also enter this room.
It was not part of the synagogue, is it?
It is. It is. I'm just waiting for everyone to come. This is what we call the study room. It's a small room with benches on two sides. Now that wall is probably an addition that they made before the war. So maybe there's another bench hiding underneath that wall. We didn't excavate that. And there's a window towards the big hall, but it's definitely part of the synagogue complex. And we think maybe this could have been a school for little children, or when there was a big thing going on, people who just wanted to read the Torah and study could sit here and pray. Now, if you go to the Capernaum synagogue, next to the synagogue there is what is called the Bet Midrash, a place of study of the Torah. And we think this may be a prototype of the later study areas which we find in the Byzantine period synagogue. And there were more rooms here. We didn't excavate everything, but here we are. In fact, the eastern wall of the synagogue complex became part of the city wall during the war. So all this area was fortified. Here we found also additions to the wall that were put from behind. Maybe someday we'll excavate the rest here. So far we don't know. Another interesting item, there is a little water channel coming in from probably one of the cisterns that we saw. It comes through the wall, over the bench, the top bench. It's covered up, you don't see it, but if you look on the wall, I'll show you if you let me calm down. Comes out here, the channel comes out here. You can see the original plaster here. This is the original plaster of the channel. Turns here, and here there's a little basin. This is also original plaster. A little basin, probably for washing the hands. We covered it up because it's very delicate. We don't want it to be destroyed. And this, what do you have today in churches to do with water? You have the basin of holy water that will go into the church, and we think this comes from the Jewish tradition of having a little basin for washing the hands. Now from this little basin, the channel went along the wall, through the far wall, and flowed into the mikveh, which we are going to see now.